Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 26th, 2020, and you are watching and or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. My name's Bill Woodcock.
And I am Jason Booms.
He hasn't let success of this podcast go to his head, everybody. Really, he has not.
Just giving it my best Guilfoyle.
Why? Oh! Is that a thing? Have you done a Guilfoyle on
sure.
social media?
I Guilfoyle at the Starbucks. Go down to the the pet barbers. I do a Guilfoyle there. It's a whole thing. The lifestyle, really.
The pet barbers? I thought you didn't even have a pet.
And?
You're just sitting there watching the dogs get trimmed.
Awesome. Gotta have hobbies in these days.
Occasional cat comes in and gets its nails clipped, maybe its teeth cleaned. Once in a while you get a little chinchilla, gets a shave, because after all, that's how they make the fur for the coats, isn't it?
Well, my grandma actually had that. She was actually a pet groomer, so it was actually very relaxing. Get to meet all kinds of different animals. So a lot of fun.
Excellent.
The fish were assholes, but oh well.
Well, speaking of animals, speaking of things you would want to keep in cages, how about that Republican National Convention, Jason? Since you hit it with the Guilfoyle, let's just go right there. What make you of this fine production that's now half over, with the Vice President speaking from Fort McHenry tonight to accept his nomination?
How secure is the site where he's speaking? I mean, is there opportunities for protesters to be seen?
There should be. I mean, Fort McHenry's pretty much one entrance, one exit.
Yeah. Well, answer to your question. Okay.
Are you thinking
of a
road trip later? If you do, you can come pick me up.
I'm considering the possibilities. All right, I'll give you my big answer to the question, what are my thoughts on the Republican National Convention? I remember on the rare occasion my stepfather and I used to be in the same room because it was a one television house, that we actually were watching the 1988 Democratic National Convention. And not because the politics were aligned with the Dukakis party, but because I was watching because it's important to watch. I wanted to, hear what the Democrats were saying. I wanted to understand the communications focus and the policy linkage. And he's like, "You really believe this stuff?" Sort of in a skeptical, sort of offhanded, sort of, "This is all garbage." Well, it's nonetheless, even if it is not meant sincerely, it is nonetheless important to watch one of the two major political parties and potentially the next president lay out their vision for the country. Turning to this convention, I feel like I'm wasting my time. I feel like everything is so inconsequential that it's all stagecraft, poor stagecraft at that. And it'll be completely obliterated by probably Laura next, given that it's strengthening. Definitely by what's going on in Kenosha, and that nothing of any consequence will come out of this convention. So in that regard, it's not even the level of guilty pleasure watching. I feel like I derive more enjoyment from watching an episode of Survivor that I saw 12 years ago than watching the RNC now. So that's where I'm at with it.
I find, so let me start by saying that I believe that this political convention season has redefined how the political conventions are held. Hopefully we'll get to back up a little bit and talk about the DNC, because for good or for worse, that was much different, and for my money, much better and much more informative and much more illustrative than I imagined it was going to be. I mean, I think you and I both kind of maybe had the impression that it was going to be like a series of Zoom conferences with a bunch of people. But those were some very well done productions, some very well thought through productions. It really conveyed the message.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and there was news leading up to the RNC that Trump and his folks, the RNC folks, Ronna McDaniel and company, were watching the Democratic National Convention, and they were hurriedly looking to do, you know, improve upon things that they thought were shortcomings of the DNC, such as have more live speeches, for example. Um, what has come through, you know, whereas with the Biden Harris convention, you definitely got an understanding of where they are, where they're going, where they want to take America for good or for ill. With this convention, you get a lot of, I mean, it's almost like Biden and Harris are the incumbents. It's almost like they are in office because the entire RNC so far has been about, well, with a couple notable exceptions, has been about Democrat failure, Democrats are crazy, and then it's been about defending, you know, not even defending, but talking about how what everything Trump is doing is working. Very little admission or discussion of the pandemic.
Mhm.
I'm not even talking about the whole blending of the executive office of the president and using federal property to do political speeches. I'm just in a given that that's a thing that shouldn't be done. You know, having the naturalization service last night, a pardon. You know, these are reality show values. So your comparison to an episode of, you know, 12 years old Survivor is apt. You know, it's almost, you know, and the scenes from the Mellon Auditorium in DC, they almost come out like, you know, like the Bachelor, I mean, or Bachelorette. I mean, who's Tiffany going to give the rose to, you know, on Thursday night? I want to know, damn it. You know, it seems that, you know, whereas the Biden Harris convention seemed to be pointed towards everybody, and perhaps they spread their peanut butter a little thin in some areas and thicker in others. The the Republican convention seems to be pointed at people in the American suburbs and exurbs. The people who this president is trying to scare to get to come out to vote, to say that African Americans are going to come out with the Democrats, are going to come out, they're going to destroy your families, they're going to destroy the American way of life. And I have a real fear that, you know, given the sort of person we see here in lovely old Howard County, Maryland, that is going to hit home. That is going to score some points because you and I know of the suburbs of which we speak, and we could, I don't know about you, but I can surely see those same people who, you know, we want school equity, but we don't want to be equitable. We don't want to send our kids to school with those people, you know, put in their heads that they are not going to, that if you put Trump in office and you don't have to worry about those people coming out to live by you, I can see that having currency.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does seem as though, you know, well, hopefully is the last gasp and hopefully dies very soon. Rancid, virulent strain of racism, which is currently infecting our public discourse. Um, and maybe it's a death rattle because they recognize that, you know, uh, the world is changing and they fear change. Although that really, in my mind, doesn't excuse, you know, what I'm sorry, I'm just that 17-year-old kid whose name I'm not going to mention, is not worth mentioning, who shot and killed two of the protesters at Kenosha, for example. Um, it's seeing this generational hate passed down one to the other, and seeing someone capitalize on that, as Trump is doing, just so nakedly. It's from a governance perspective, it's just so appalling, and I just don't know what to make of this level of hate, and what's going to follow after, regardless of who wins this election. I mean, to your point, at least with the current administration, or not current administration, sorry, but at least with the convention we saw with Biden and Harris, we saw, I would say, adults for the most part, serious, statespeople. Occasionally there are, some lighter moments, but you didn't see that. Just, I can't recall a convention historically where you've seen this level of sheer malevolence that's being articulated.
You did not see bile.
No.
I mean, probably the most bileful person during the entire Democratic National Convention was Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who's a comedian. And of course, I have gone on record as being far from the biggest Julia Louis-Dreyfus fan. I don't think she's very funny, but damn it, the line about Biden can find a church without needing federalized troops and tear gas was good. But that was maybe the meanest thing that was said about this president the entire week. And it was a convention that, and I don't want to sound like a cheerleader, but it was a convention that reminded me, at least, having been around the block a little bit, of what politics should be. Truly what politics should be, not some slogan for some third-rate, local hack to use. It should be about an exchange of the ideas. It should be about, this is what America is. And, it should be about, this is our policy versus this is the other guy's policy. We agree. These are the issues in this country. We disagree on how we fix them. Of course, the Republican Party nowadays is very apt at projection, and they're very apt at transference. So everything that you're hearing out of members of the president's family, the Secretary of State, everybody, about how this country is going to end and how dystopian things are going to be with the liberal left-wing Democrats in charge. Holy smokes, where have they been? What have they done? I was on Sunday, I took my first glance at the RNC's convention page, and I was like, oh, gee, there must be a platform. And then I was like, there's no platform. Why is there no platform? It's not even, we adopt the 2016 platform. It's simply, it came out Monday. It's, we support President Trump. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be a thinking Republican right now, because it has to be very, very sad. And this is why so many of them are jumping across to support Joe Biden. But it's just, it's like, it's not even a Republican National Convention to me. It's not even that. There's just, it is total fantasy land. And it's a bad fantasy. It's evil.
And you're exactly right. And as I jotted down, it's about the bubble. I don't think we've ever seen a disconnect at the national level play itself out as succinctly as it has over the course of the RNC that we've had and the DNC that was recently completed. I understand, just from a messaging perspective, that if you're the party in power and things out there are pretty bad, you accentuate the positive. But there's so little to accentuate if you're the incumbent administration. And it just doesn't seem like people are operating on, I was going to be a bit glib on that, but they're not they're not in touch with reality. And that's very distressing. Is this an intentional out of touch with the reality where it's just a deliberate strategy? We'll put on our happy face, or is this legitimate? No idea what's going on in the world. They're just floating by and happen to have a lot of money and power. I mean, it's extremely disconcerting because even in the days when things for both parties, we've all seen rough conventions and rough times for the party, but nonetheless, you always had the sense of, well, the folks are fundamentally serious or grounded, or well, it's not the time for this wing of the party, but it will be. So there is a sense of optimism. Where does the Republican Party go from here? I mean, it's just such a train wreck.
Every incumbent president since I've been following politics has been able to articulate to a great degree the successes of their administration and to criticize the policies of the challenger. I see none of the first at this convention, extremely little of the second, and then the third, and this is a new thing, unfortunately, with this president and this administration, these theatrics and this, I mean, to call it dog whistling, to call it gaslighting, I don't know. We need a new word because I don't think these words ably capture. I mean, alternative facts. It is just describing a situation in a nation that frankly does not exist. And I don't know who that buys, except if he drew the inside straight last time, he's looking to draw the royal flush. And he's thinking that he can get enough people again, get the rural folks out in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and Arizona and North Carolina to come out and vote for him. Maybe double that up with some voter suppression, although I do think that they took their shot a little early with messing up the post office, because now it seems that enough parties are onto this game that I'm not sure they'll be able to pull that off. And somehow, draw the jack of clubs on the last card and somehow pull this out. And frighteningly, I mean, I saw 538 today. The buyer, I mean, it's still a Biden is favored to win the election, but it went down in literally a day from 74 to 26 to 69 to 30. Mm-hmm. So, there's a tightening, and we imagine that it's going to, we political folks imagine it's going to get tighter. God bless, I can't understand how.
Well, a few points. I was just going to say, I remember early in the Bush administration, where I was working with some of my colleagues from overseas, and we were in a meeting together, and they were yucking it up like, how can you elect this guy? And, we laughed along and, well, electoral college, da-da-da. But to a more serious point, 40 years from now, assuming we're all still around, how can we possibly explain, what's the language you can use to truly capture how fucked up the Trump administration was? I think people will look at us like, was there some sort of collective insanity that took place that would explain this? Because, and again, just going to the idea of reality-based governance for a second, and just trying that out. Beyond the slogan, Trump hasn't delivered anything for blue-collar America or middle America. Or I was thinking back to Michigan, my own example, and there's a bunch of folks. So I'm sure they were George Wallace voters in the 60s and 70s, and they were with Reagan in the 80s. But Trump has delivered nothing for them. He has failed on every promise. And how far can you ride on? Well, he may not help me out, but he'll stick it to them more. That's not a plan. I mean, how long can you ride on this sort of visceral, nativist response?
Well, I
Apparently, at
mean,
least 4 years, but can it last 8?
yeah, I mean, he's delivered a tax cut, but I mean, if you're in Iowa, your farm's really sucking it because he blew up trade with China. Um, I guess, yeah, I mean, he is not helped, I don't think. I mean, where are the success stories? I mean, that's what I don't get. Where is the I am this small businessman, and thanks to Donald Trump and his tax cut, I was able to invest in my business, and now I am now making $20 million a year. Where is any of that? I mean, don't people write into the White House, if nothing else, and say that, hey, this is something that's happened? My God, don't they have all of every Republican member of Congress by the genitals and 30 governors? Don't they know of any success stories that are directly due to this president's intervention of anything that he's done? Anything. But instead, it's scare tactic, scare tactic, scare tactic. I agree with you. I'm only going to challenge your premise of 40 years from now, only in one thing. Only if this thing gets done in 2020. Only if Trump loses. Because I do fear for what happens in the intervening 4 years, because he will go off for at least the first 2 years totally unfettered, if not the next four. And we as a nation are responding so well to his nonsense. I can't even imagine what sort of Blade Runner looking crap we'll be in 2024 should he win again.
And that's well said. um, and that's the reason I'm thinking, maybe the Republican Party is willing to let these lunatics go on the stage and announce their support for Trump because they want Trump to own this. And the only way they figure they can kill Trump, figuratively speaking, is by sort of, hanging the party around him and let it completely implode. That was a strategy that actually was used in labor in Britain in 1983, where labor rights said, fine, if the left wants their platform, they're going to get their platform. We'll agree to everything. And when it goes down in flames, we'll retake the party again. The 1983 manifesto was literally called the world's longest suicide note by one of the right-wing MPs, Gerald Kaufman. And maybe that's the case. Maybe they're like, all right, Republicans are like, fine, let's give it to you. It'll go down in flames, and then we can go back to rebuild. But what would a second Trump administration even look like? I mean, historically, second terms, especially the last 2 years, are time to shift over to foreign policy and try to win a big legacy accomplishment there. Do you really want him more on the world stage? I mean, what can he possibly do in a second 4 years other than something immensely destructive?
Oh, well, I mean, there's war. That's always a winner. There could be the G7 and Mar-a-Lago. The signing of the Trump hotel contracts for St. Petersburg, Moscow, Kiev, of course, because the Ukraine, Istanbul, Pyongyang. There are any number of wonderful things he could do. And then in terms of domestic policy, he could try to eliminate the payroll tax, which would then run Social Security out of money in about 3 years' time.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I mean, I think he would be buffered by a Democratic House and Senate. So then he would try to go full king route and go executive order. which then would lead to constitutional challenge after challenge after challenge. And plus probably about 500,000 more Americans dying of this pandemic. So, lots of great things, so much women.
And that's best case.
However, some black people from Baltimore City may move into Clemens Crossing, and God knows we can't have that.
I mean, the fact that he has any support at all in Howard County is very dispiriting, or Maryland. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that I'm waiting for, and this goes to what you were saying about 538 in the polls, the debates, I think, are, even though people are locked into who they like, there are very few, I think, true independents. I think we've spoken about that at some length. But I can't wait for this year's version of Are You Better Off Than You Were 4 years ago? Whatever that newest articulation is, which I'll be glad to write for the Biden campaign for a mere $500,000, that this should end it for Trump. Biden delivers that one line, he delivers it well, this thing can be over. And so I just hope that they're really focusing the speechwriters have their work cut out for them, but I'm really hoping that they've got that ready to go.
I am personally a fan of 6 months into his administration, white supremacists killed a woman, and he said there were very fine people on both sides. And the way Joe delivers that line, which is awesome. But I agree. I mean, not just one. I think there will probably be about 5 that will make people, maybe, get out of their hallucination and go, huh? Holy shit, we elected the guy from The Apprentice. And he's been running it like The Apprentice. This sucks. And that will do it. I don't know, Jason. I mean, I saw, and at this time of year 4 years ago, I saw a world where Hillary Clinton lost the election. I didn't want to believe it. At this point, I can't even see that world where Joe Biden loses the election. But I know that if everybody who can doesn't get out there and hump and bump and bump and grind, that this could happen again. And Maryland may be safely blue, but we are nearby at least a couple of states, really 3 states, if you're willing to take a little drive, that might not be.
Yeah. And heaven forbid, I don't want to live in America where where some of those far right-wing folks feel even more empowered to act however they act. So that is a very frightening prospect. Yeah. But has there been any, from your perspective on the speakers at the Republican National Convention, have there been any standouts, anyone worth even talking about for a minute is like, oh, okay, they did something?
The only one who I think has been in any way passable has been Nikki Haley. But I mean, Nikki Haley was somebody before this. I think she's still going to try to hang her hat on the Trump brand and be the Trump gal as we head towards 2024. I mean, you'll notice that there's been no sight nor head nor hair of Larry Hogan at this convention. Incidentally, I wonder if Larry Hogan's figuring out who he's going to vote for now. About 2 weeks ago, he said he could still see himself voting for Trump. But that would be about it. I mean, Tim Scott is a capable orator, so there really wasn't any surprise there in anything he said. The Trump kids, are do fine. I mean, I like Tiffany because at least she seems to be doing her own thing, which is cool. But Kim Klacik, the couple who, some of Sarah Palin's leftover clothes allowance was spent on, and talking about their bold stand, with their weapons. I'm just not seeing where this convention has created any stars or even any memorable characters to make you go, oh, that's somebody to look for.
Yep. Yep. And that's it. We're not seeing anyone, not seeing any Mario Cuomo's or anyone stand up or like, this is someone to watch. No, we knew Nikki Haley was someone to watch. I mean, that was the I guess the sad thing is she still, well, from a positioning perspective, I understand she still wants to be her own person, yet have some whatever favorable attachment might still exist to Trump in 4 years. But yeah, I mean, just one person after. Who's that woman who spoke yesterday? Abby Johnson, was it? I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, yeah, yeah. At first, I thought it said Abby Huntsman, and I knew that was not Abby Huntsman. But the woman, was that the woman who said that she was glad that her brown child was profiled?
That and her
Yeah.
call for one vote per household, and just
Whoa, Columbia Village elections.
God. And it was like, these are the folks the party wants to put forward. I mean, just representing what I hope is a very small constituency that fluked into it. But it's, yeah, for any traditional year, this is decidedly off message, but now they seem to be embracing that. You have something kooky that you want to say, come on up on the stage and just scream into it for 90 seconds and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something a little bit more normal. Let's talk about what happened the week before.
Sure.
I mean, what were your impressions of the DNC from Milwaukee and a random Rhode Island beach where a solitary calamari chef stands guard, and many other places?
I think it was outside of Quahog, pretty sure. But you know, the one thing I enjoyed about the convention is you saw the potential for how it might change in the future. So it was a very modern convention. I mean, even allowing for the unique circumstances, I mean, it did seem well produced, but not in a way that made it overly, that emphasized the fact, hey, look how slick we are. No, it just, you didn't have, as you know, those longer droning speeches that you happen to have at the old style conventions. And you know, I thought the messaging was tight. The you know, visually, I thought, you know, it looked good. Yeah, again, definitely combating the fear of it being a Zoom style convention, which I thought would be just horrific. But no, I mean, you know, Biden stepped up, which is always a bit. And we talked about this. I'm like, how's he going to do? What Joe Biden are we going to on the stage today? But so that went well.
No
And,
malarkey.
hmm?
No malarkey.
God.
Come on, man.
I just kept thinking, you know, like, okay, are we getting Woody Harrelson back in the fall to play him on SNL? Hopefully. But no, it was, you know, overall, I mean, I thought it was, you know, it was fine. You know, I have nothing much else to say about it.
Yeah, I thought it was well. You know, I said my top three. You know, people who could make a little splish splash, and I think I hit 2 out of the 3. That was an easy 2 out of the 3. The speeches were very, and top to bottom. I mean, there was a little bit of stuff that looked, you know, Zoom conferencey in like the first hour of each evening, especially the first evening. You know, the only thing that looked clunky. I mean, I remember that forum, with 4 people who were being affected by Donald Trump. And they were having a little live discussion. That was that was a little awkward. But overall, I mean, you know, I mean, who didn't hit it out of the park? I mean, President Obama did, Michelle Obama did, Kamala Harris did. You know,
Gretchen Whitmer, who I thought this was an important speech for her, she did. I don't think she hit. I think there
No,
was a bit of a Bobby Jindal moment there.
did okay, you know, but the ones who you were expecting were going to slug it. Bill Clinton, you know, I mean, they hit hard. You know, I was a little surprised at the volume of Republicans for Biden who got ladled in there. I mean, the Susan Molinari, the Christy Todd Whitman, Colin Powell. Um, I mean, at some time, it just seemed like, yeah, okay, Joe, you got a lot of Republicans who support you. That's good. Save some for the next 12 weeks. That might be a good idea. I do agree that I think, I would have liked to have seen an Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley. I would have liked to have seen them on there. I think they deserved it. Your 1 minute of AOC turned out to be, I think, maybe a minute and a half, but she was doing the seconding for Bernie. um and so I think there could have been a little bit more of that balance, but overall, I thought it was a really well done convention, a model for the future. I think it's a model for way to participate in the future, a replacement for the traditional let's all go into an arena and let's all get shit faced drunk for a week. Probably
That's
not.
what we know. Those are the conventions.
That's what we know, and I don't think anything's a substitute for that. That's just like 15 Zoom happy hours. You need that. Plus, I believe they're, socially, just generally drinking alone's a bad idea. Anyway, and speaking, I can't tell some of the people in River Hill that. But because they get online and then they start posting in education news groups. Anyway, it was I thought it was about as well done as could have been done, being that the thing was a great big experiment.
Yeah, fair enough. And yes, I do agree the Republicans were well situated by having theirs go second so they could, crib some notes. I would be curious to see what happens with the convention that's going to take place on the 30th of August, which is the Movement for a People's Party is having their convention on that day. I'm not sure of the logistics around it, but I do know who the speakers are, and it is just a power-packed lineup.
Tell me more.
Well, which is unfortunate because I'm sympathetic to many of the folks there.
It's unfortunate for you to tell me more.
Well, I mean, yeah, Cornel West, for example, Dr. West will be there. Nina Turner will be there.
Oh, how come I knew Nina Turner was going to be involved?
Why would she not? And big fan. But then, of course, you get folks like Marianne Williamson and Mike Gravel. And I know both of those candidates have their fans out there. I don't get it, but discussing the possibilities. Well, what hopefully will still end up being a movement that'll produce a 95% plus Biden voters. But I am curious to see how they're going to frame the conversation and the debate and what it might mean for a potential realignment down the road.
Yeah, again, this is presupposing not just a great outcome, but a wonderful outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That Nate Silver at the end of the 80, of the curve of the bell curve projection where Joe Biden wins 504 electoral votes, or at least over 450.
Yeah.
But the question you're asking by saying this that I hear is, does the Republican Party make itself so irrelevant? And I agree with you that this is almost like, scorched earth by the part of Republican moderates and even conservatives, thinking Republicans. I mean, we had the former state delegate Flanagan on here, and I mean, he basically said that this was what their strategy is to outlast Trump, be the little creatures dillying around in the weeds, and then rebuild and evolve, and then become the apex predator again. Yeah, unfortunately, political parties don't necessarily act on that. They act in these 2 and 4 year cycles. And I think to purge the entire diseases of Trumpism, I think you're probably looking at least an 8 year project to get a credible Republican presidential candidate again. Because not only do you have to beat Trump in 2020, you have to beat whoever the heir to Trump is in 2024. And of course, then also draw with that all the state and locals. So, does that lead to a Democratic Party that is simply too big and then it splinters off to the left? I think it's possible. I still think it's less possible than the Republican Party reforms itself within an 8 year time frame. And I would also say that if you do see that sort of realignment, then that could assist in a reconstituted Republican Party becoming a little bit more of a force. Hell, you could wind up having a far right party that maybe funded by the Trumps of the world. And let's admit, I mean, how much is he going to buy One America Network after he gets out of office? And then you have 4 parties going, which is probably the right number for this country anyway.
I mean, I guess the thing that, you see what's going on in Germany, like with the AfD and the rise of these far right parties in the parliamentary system. It would be curious to see, if something similar happened in America. Even if this People's Party were to launch, I know I'm sounding pessimistic about it, but I'm looking askance at the present leadership of it, and I'm not blown away necessarily, except for a handful of people. It's almost like it's okay. This is the sort of thing that it gets up and running. Maybe it does something in 2024. And then it fades shortly thereafter, like the progressives of the early, or the Progressive Party of the early 20th century, or even the progressives in '48 under Henry Wallace. I mean, they were there, and then the next cycle they were basically gone. So I have a hard time seeing that left having that staying power to form its own entity. But then again, because usually the Democratic Party does its best to accommodate to a certain extent. I don't know. I guess if there's this tremendous success on the Democratic side, maybe there'll be less pressure to take on these left-wing views. I don't know. I guess it depends on who gets the most credit for the victory in terms of energizing the base. Will the left get the credit, or will this go to the more corporatist side getting credit?
Well, one word I will offer for you, Kamala. And the other thing I will muse to you, which isn't Mike Gravel a youthful 91?
For that, yeah, I admit. I mean, he's the definition of spry. So he seems to be doing all right.
Yeah. So I mean, 110, 115 for Gravel does not seem out of the question. So maybe, do not despair is no question. So I guess, and this is an interesting segue that I'm cooking up in my little laboratory of a brain. Let's see if it works. I would say that a political party would need a lot of capital, and a lot of capital on the left. And very interesting developments going on in the light of everything that's going on in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with the shooting of Jacob Blake. 7 shots in his back in front of his kids, where they were trying to get him to not go into his car. I don't know. Normally, shooting out tires works, or windows. Not sure why those bullets had to go in the man's back as opposed to those parts of his car. But there is a very small, very minority, and very wealthy clientele that is getting fed up of all of this, and that is the professional athlete. The NBA games that were scheduled for today, first the Milwaukee Bucks said we're not coming out to play Orlando. Then that game was not forfeited, it was canceled. It's been boycotted. The two NBA games this evening, including LeBron James's LA Lakers playing a playoff game tonight as well. Those games have been called off for this evening. And just now, over the telephone, I got a notification that the Milwaukee Brewers home game tonight against Cincinnati has been canceled because the Brewers and the Reds decided not to play, to show their outrage and to show that something has to change in the light of all of these shootings. So now we're seeing, these athletes saying, we're not going to perform for you. We're pissed that things are not changing, and now we are not going to perform. And I not only do I not blame them, I totally support them. And I think that now we have reached another level in the level of resistance and voice that athletes want to have in the conversation, and how they want to push the conversation in a very meaningful way by using not just their skills but the economic impact they're displaying their skills brings by using that as a tool. You and I talked about this just barely in the pre-show, but what do you make of this?
Well, I think the one thing that comes to mind is it's a clear sign that we're in a cultural time. And there was a political scientist who wrote about, with the democratization of different means of communications that, whereas historically, your elected officials, your thought leaders on public policy issues were electeds, sometimes they're military officers. But now you have a world of celebrity, earned or unearned, and capital flowing with that. So now you have people that are ability to put a significant amount of money behind, for example, an anti-racism initiative. So while it's great that there is this increased awareness and that some of these athletes are helping to build awareness, yet simultaneously, I'm hoping that there's more structural elements put in place, and the people are using their capital to try to bring about, substantive change. I mean, not playing games in protest is great because it gets a lot of attention. But what are we doing on the ground to change society or change how we're governed? Or look at economic issues and think about, is there a better way of allocating our societal resources? So hopefully some of the athletes will be, helping to foster those larger conversations that might actually lead to something positive. We've seen where a celebrity can be extremely destructive in office. So it would be nice to see some folks do. I mean, I know several athletes who do fantastic work, whether it's with a community or a foundation, but to really get involved in policy matters and try to do something that has a long-lasting effect on society. It would be great to see some money used for that purpose.
Well, yeah, and so you bring up great points, and I tie those in with what you were saying in the last topic. I mean, we're talking about young men. I mean, LeBron is old; he's 35. Okay, he's 35. It's a very young man, but old for NBA.
Yeah, and women.
And well, WNBA too, right? And they've been dealing with this. The Atlanta team has basically been in revolt because Kelly Loeffler is one of the owners and refuses to support BLM. But you have people, who are intelligent, who are aware, and I guess I'm focusing on the men because they make much, much, much more money. I don't know how much LeBron makes, but the $38 million he makes as a member of the Lakers is not his primary source of income. And he's given a lot of it back to the Akron community and to the state of Ohio where he's from. So when you're looking at, action, I mean, could one see a political movement coming from these athletes active and retired, putting together their, capital and saying, yeah, these are things we want to see. You could see that. Could you see that, because they are going now, these shows of opposition are going to another level. Could you see that 2 years down the road, if there is not fundamental social change in this country, could you see that form as some sort of a movement, maybe even a party, something like that? Who knows? 5 years ago, nobody thought that, a nutball who got stunnered by Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18 could be the most powerful man on earth. Well, I guess Putin did not get Stone Cold stunnered WrestleMania 18, but you know where I was going. So yeah, I wouldn't count it out. I wouldn't count out that what we're seeing tonight is the start of something bigger and more meaningful.
Well, and if it is a way to, again, illustrate the power of unions and working through collective action, that would be great. I'm a bit skeptical, of course, about anyone rich, funding a genuinely left enterprise just because of the fact it works against their class interest. But that's another conversation.
Well, class interest and blood interest are two different things. And I think what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that, black people are getting killed, and they shouldn't be. One of the players on the Bucks was the victim of police harassment a couple years ago. So I don't know. I'm going to take the rare position of being the more optimistic person of us, and think that this is a thing that's here to stay, and I'm going to be intrigued to see how this carries out. Late breaking news as of like a mere 45 seconds ago, the entire league is meeting at 8:00 tonight to talk about what to do with even the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? They could break out of the bubble sooner than we think.
Well, good point. Oh, but we need to go back to look at the tape again of how long we predicted the baseball season would last. I think I had August 18th, so we're 8 days past that already. I think you might have had something around this time or a bit later.
I thought I had later.
Yeah, a bit later, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it seems to be getting on there. I mean, who was it? The Mets, I think, had a couple people, or was it Cincinnati? Was it the Reds?
I think it might have been the Reds that had a couple. Yeah.
They have a couple.
Yeah.
So yeah, those might both be prognostications gone awry. And may I also add not to rub grapefruit on a wart, but Joe Biden is indeed the Democratic nominee.
Okay, fine. So are you going to pull that tape at me saying if he even makes it to New Hampshire? But yeah, not the first time I've been wrong.
It
will be the last.
We can accept. We accept being wrong. That's what makes this. That's what makes this the premier show of its kind in the state of Maryland.
There you go.
So, Jason, any closing thoughts this evening?
In this next 70 days, I mean, it's just going to be absolutely fascinating. And I know we had a candidate on running for a city council, Muller Paz, on talking about the best way of voting. I'm just looking ahead, and yes, I fundamentally trust the mail system, but part of me just wants to go on election day, regardless of what's going on in the world, just to have that extra level of certainty that I cast my ballot, because I just want to make this thing real as humanly possible. Know what I mean? So these next 10 weeks need to fly by.
I am going to be one of those. So I've already requested my absentee ballot. I've checked the status. I see that it's been processed. They will next let me know when they send it to me. I am going to hand deliver that sucker to my local board of elections.
Yep.
And not put that bad boy back in the mail. And I am truly going to vote as soon as I can, which probably means within a half hour of actually receiving it. So, you know, you can do that in this state and in many others. Incidentally, as a reminder, I don't think anybody who's watching or listening to this show has that problem. But no one cares if people get a ballot that they didn't ask for. Voting is a actual American right. Whether you choose to exercise that right is up to you. So some fat orange, you know, grimace wannabe talking about ballots that people don't even want are being mailed to them. You know, I'd rather get a election ballot than a Val pack any day of the week, and twice on Saturday. So there.
So that's just a reminder to our Republican friends to vote on November 30th. So good luck.
I will be happy to harvest Republican votes. You can trust me. And with that, we go hyper local next meeting. Next meeting, yes. Next episode, boys and girls, as we continue to interview every at least passably sane candidate for Howard County Board of Education in the 4th District, as we interview write-in candidate Julie Hotop, and that will be this coming Saturday. So watch for the recording soon thereafter. So Jason, anything to sign us off with?
Nope, nothing catchy yet.
Okay, well, that was it. That was perfect. So for Jason Booms, my name is Bill Woodcock. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Forward Maryland. Have a great evening, everybody. Take care.